Good evening.
Good evening. You are live here courtside with Lawman,
And Carmen B.
and we are here to talk about legal issues and social justice issues that affect the public.
Yes, we are.
We are an informational and an educational program. We want you to be engaged. We want you to post your questions or your comments in the chat or to call in. You can call in at 916-443-5288.
Or I think you can email us or anyway try to reach us, and we'll try to talk about issues out in the public and regarding criminal law. But understand that when we talk about them, we're discussing things in general, and we're not creating any attorney-client relationship with anyone. And myself, Lawman, or Carmen B.
Yes, so we invite your questions, but if you need an actual consultation for an issue that is impacting you, you can reach Lawman at
443-5600-916 area code.
or Carmen B at 916-443-5200.
All right.
Oh, that is not correct. 5288.
Too many numbers.
916-443-5288.
All right. Well, tonight, I think we put on there regarding law enforcement and black kids, because as we know, law enforcement and African American men, black women, there's a constant conflict, it seems, with the behavior between the two. You know, last week we talked a lot about shooting of a black man in the back of his head. His funeral, I think, was yesterday or today or something like that. But it just illustrates why we cannot force the police to change behaviors, that we have to change behaviors. And Carm, we're going to bring up, I think, a couple of incidents that's happened over the last week or so involving cops and black kids and how they are treated. And what we'll find and what we see and what we know out there, from Tamir Rice to children who are in school who are being detained by police, is that they use the force that they would use on adults, on children. There was a young black girl that was in the back seat of the car, and she was crying for her mommy, and the lady came up and not tased, but maced her, you know, to keep her quiet, to make her not stop talking. So we know that the problem is not just for adults, but it reaches children too. And I'll start with telling you that, look, for adults, you got to do the game plan. And the game plan is changing your response to everything by asking any officer at any time you are encountering them, am I free to go? What you do is you invoke the Fourth Amendment by saying that, because now they have to articulate that you either can go or that you can't go.
Well, what do I do when they articulate that in a very rude, mean, and nasty way?
You shouldn't articulate it in that way, and no matter
No,
what they're doing.
when
Well,
they
that's
respond, I
right.
follow what you're telling me to
Yeah,
do, lawman.
that's right.
And then the officer is rude, mean,
That's
and
right.
uses curse words.
That's
What
right.
do I do in that instance?
In that case, you call for your lawyer. You ask, I just want a lawyer. That's it. And here's the thing: people are rude all the time. People call you names all the time. Bullies and stuff bully people all the time. If we took retaliation for every time somebody done something to us, including cutting us off in a car, then we're not living right. And you're playing into the hands of the abuser.
Well, what about the people who say, well, lawman, I'm a man, just like the
Hmm.
officer who is talking to me,
That's right.
assuming it's a male officer, is a man.
That's
And
right.
he needs to speak to me as if I'm a man. So if I ask,
Nope.
officer, am I free to leave?
That's
And
right.
he says, are you fucking stupid?
That's right.
Hell no, you're not free to leave.
Then,
What do I do in that circumstance?
well, you
He
say,
just
then
was
I want my
extremely
lawyer.
disrespectful.
Then I want my lawyer. That's it. You see, why would sticks and stones be the, I mean, why would words ever hurt me? Okay. Why would attitudes ever hurt me? Your parents have probably talked to you worse than that.
They're my
So,
parents. They're allowed to talk to me worse than that. They brought me in this world. They can take me out. This
and let me
officer
explain.
is
Come
just
on.
a man like I'm a man
Mm-hmm.
doing
Doing
a
what?
job.
Oh, you're right. And part of his job has brought you to you. right?
It has brought him to me.
That's right.
And he
And
is
during that
supposed to
occasion,
treat me with respect.
I
The same amount of
challenge you,
respect that
please
he would want if he were being stopped.
go get the law that he'd have to do that. Please find me anywhere where it's written where officers must do that.
Just because it's not written in the law
That's right.
doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do,
Oh, so
lawman.
we live in utopia now.
That
Where
that
is that where we live?
that we clearly do not, because
Then
because
we act like we don't live in utopia then, and expect people to act in a way that is not commensurate with what their jobs are and what their attitudes are.
so what you're saying is that the badge gives him the right to
Nope.
speak to me in any foul way, and I just have to stand there and take it.
Whether
Is
he
that
had a
what you're
badge
saying?
or not, he could speak to you in any foul way.
But the difference is he has a badge,
So,
and that badge allows him to treat me in ways that
nope.
other people could not be treated.
You
Someone else could talk to me rude, mean, and nasty in the grocery store, let's
right.
say, but they can't then also arrest me,
But
twist my arm.
Carmen, the issue becomes.
I'm not being Carmen during this, of course.
I know.
I'm being a.
I know.
If I were a male, I'm telling you what I hear from the males.
Person.
What I hear from.
Let me explain something to you. Just because the person has the badge is, and just because they have encountered you, may not mean that you can expect them to treat you a certain way. Remember, I told you, so this is a bears in the woods situation. If you walk into the woods and you know that there are bears there, then you cannot be surprised that the bears may stalk you, run you down, and kill you. You can't be surprised that that happens. Now, I'm just saying you are in the bears territory. And we are in the bears territory in society because we've hired police officers to police things in society.
But so, we've not hired them to be rude, mean, and nasty to people.
If they want to be, they are. But I haven't seen a lawsuit that says, hey, the cop was rude, mean, and nasty, and therefore he violated my rights. What I'm talking about is how the cop must respect your rights. That's all I'm talking about. And the way you do it is you do it. You don't expect him to do it. How are you going to sit there and say, why are you talking to me that way, officer? Why are you doing this to me? That don't work. I'm going to tell you what works. What works is you control you. Officer comes at you hard, you just say, I want my lawyer. That's it. It's magical words. If he has detained you, you've got a right to say, I want my lawyer. Fourth and Fifth Amendments of the Constitution allow you to do that. And that is exercising your right. You're not letting them lie there and expect somebody to tell you you're right. When you exercise them, you become powerful. Just like when you exercise and lift weights, you become powerful. I say, and the whole point of today is this: children are subjected to the same thing. Young children are subjected to rudeness, excessive force, and they also must exercise that. And I'm just saying, you got to know in a situation, am I free to go? You see, you want to go. Everybody don't want to be there. So how is it hard to say, can I just go?
And then the officer says to me, no, you stupid idiot, you can't go.
That's right. And I would be a stupid idiot if I started arguing with the officer. That's where he'd be right if that was the case.
What do I do in that circumstance?
I want my lawyer and name, rank, serial number, and that's it. Which I mean, just identify you, and that's it, because you're detained, so you have to identify yourself. But you know you're detained under the Fourth Amendment, and you have rights. And your rights say you don't have to say anything, you don't have to consent to a search or anything.
Well, let me say this. This brings us to one of the issues, the incident that happened, I believe, in Syracuse, New York, where there was a child, and I'm not 100% certain of the age, but I know it was either between 8 or 11, somewhere between 8 years old and 11 years old. Right. So clearly a child in anyone's mind. And apparently he was accused of, or maybe he actually did, steal a bag of potato chips. And law enforcement responded and kind of was extremely rough with this child.
Yep.
First of all, it's a show of force when you have officers that show up with their guns just in their normal uniform. That's a uniform that shows force. Imagine multiple officers appearing in that uniform and standing before a child. A child who usually a child is going to cower in front of an adult just because the adult is much larger in size.
Kids today don't
But
do that.
you add to that the fact that it is a person who's not only an adult, but an adult who has a gun and a badge and a taser. And the child is clearly distraught. And it doesn't seem as if the officers are trying to calm this kid down
Right.
like you would do normally with a kid who is distraught and let him know, hey, you've done something bad, but we're gonna take you home to your parents. What you did, you should not have done. Either we're gonna cite you or we're gonna take you to your parents and issue a citation. Now, my understanding is that they didn't actually cite him. He wasn't actually charged with a crime, and they didn't actually handcuff him. But we have seen instances where they have handcuffed
That's
children.
right.
And we're not talking about teenagers, although teenagers are still qualify as children. We're talking about kids who are
Preteens.
pre-teen.
Okay.
And so, lawman,
Yes.
what needs to be done in these circumstances? What
All
are the
right.
ramifications? And before you answer that, let me just read some of the comments from CC Badger. She says, yes, yes, yes. It's terribly sad. And they just expect us to accept, oh, well, he wasn't treat their own child that way, or a child who looked like their own child.
Boy, you gave me some great information here. Now, watch how we break this down. First and foremost, the issue of would they treat their child that way is not the issue. Okay, they may go home and beat their kid and kill their kid, whatever they're going to do. They may treat their child that same way. But we are talking about children who are encountering officers in the public. Okay, and they're not their own kids. Now,
I think,
get back to,
I'll let you go
no,
ahead.
no. I mean, but here's the thing. How
'Cause-
do you expect, hold on, where is it that a cop has to go? How would I treat my own kid before he treats any kid in any way? Because I'm going to tell you something about kids. Kids do things. Why would I expect to talk to a kid who just robbed me, assaulted me, or stole from me? Because the cop didn't come.
We're not
Hold on.
talking
Yes,
about
we
those
are.
kinds of
You said,
situations.
hold on.
We
You
are
said,
not talking about
you
those
said
kinds
if
of
a kid
situations.
does something, you should
Well,
sit him
here's what I'm-
down, talk to him.
But
But
we're
I'm not the
taking it-
enforcer. The
Hold on.
enforcer is the cop who's called by me.
Hold on.
That kid robbed me. I call the cops. The cops
I'm
can
not
go
talking
investigate.
about you as an enforcer.
No,
Hold
I'm talking
on.
about a citizen.
Hold on.
Any
No,
citizen.
I'm specifically talking about the officer
That's
that
right.
responds and how he should
I
treat that.
said the
Are you
kid
gonna let me
stole.
finish?
No,
You can't
because
talk-
I said
Are- but
because
the-
I
but
took
the-
your situation.
Here's the
The-
problem.
Who called them on them?
Here's the problem,
Who
sir.
called them?
Here's the problem.
Go.
You cannot. We can't talk over each other.
Who
It's
called
not. We can't talk over each other. It's not conducive.
You gave
for-
me 14 questions and I'm just answering.
It's not conducive for our audience. So I think that that CC Badger's point was, if it was a child who was not an African American child or a child of color
Three things.
under the same situation, would they be treated the same way? Now, we're talking about a kid who stole a bag of potato chips. We're not talking about a robber. We're not talking about a murderer. So I
said
think it is
stole from me.
unfair. But then you start talking about robbery. So I think it's unfair
if he
to
stole
talk
my
about a
chips
more
and
serious
pushed
crime.
me,
That's
it's
not.
robbery. Carm, you know that.
I was unaware of any
Here's the
allegation of
deal.
a pushing.
I don't care why the
of
call,
any
but here's the
allegation of
thing.
a pushing.
Let's handle
This
it
is a
this
theft.
way.
So let's talk
I don't
about
care
this one.
if the
It's a
cop.
theft.
I don't care if the kid vandalized. The cops are called. When the cops are called, the cops will respond.
And that's
If it's-
absolutely fine.
and if it's
They're
a
expected
child-
to respond.
Hold on. If it's a child, they can't. They shouldn't delineate their behavior because it's a child.
That is exactly not true. There are different rules
Where
for
is
dealing
that?
with children.
Where are those rules?
What do you mean? They're in the law.
Where are they?
They're in the law. They're different, just like, well, and
Of
of
how to
course,
treat
every state,
children different
every
than adults?
every state
I
has
thought we call cops
okay,
out for
it's not going to work if
crimes, but
you,
we call them out for crimes, Carm.
Miss
What if a
Lawman,
child, 8, 9 year
Lawman,
old killed someone?
it's not going to work if we talk over each other.
You're right.
So
That's why I'm trying to answer the question and you won't even let me answer. But go ahead.
again, you keep elevating. We're talking about this specific situation
Yes,
where it's a child who
that's
committed
right.
who committed a
Theft.
who committed a petty theft. We're
Right.
not talking about a robber.
That's
We're
what
not
I'm
talking
talking about.
about a murderer.
I am
And
talking
there
about
are
that.
special rules for how you treat children. You're in California. You're not allowed to interview children without allowing them the opportunity to speak to their parent.
But there's
So
an
that
age.
is a so is that not
Isn't
a
there an
different?
age issue?
Is that not a different way than what you would treat an adult?
Okay, hold on.
So there are
Hold
different
on.
rules for dealing
Let
with
me hear
children.
that rule again, that you can't interrogate them without a parent, right? That's the rule. Not you don't be rude, just sit them down and stuff. You can't interrogate them without a parent. What does that have to do with the cops' behavior? None.
It has everything. So
None.
when your mind,
They're
what you're
rude. See,
saying,
wait a minute.
what
Hold
you're
on.
saying,
How you
what
talking
you're
over me
saying.
now? Because I'm showing you that.
So we have some comments. It says, CC Badger says, "Ladies first." Lawman doesn't care about ladies.
I gave her
This kid-
all the leeway to
this
explain
kid
to
may
me.
this kid may have been starving. Who in the hell knows? The person who called was ignorant. Back in the day, the owner would approach the child and find out why the child is stealing and then contact the parent.
Two things back in the day. It's not today. Okay. Other thing, someone called to report a crime. Okay. Just like I said about black men, they don't get there and they do a Rorschach test and a PTSD test to find out how sensitive this kid is and all that kind of stuff. See? Okay, now watch. Here's all I'm saying. My whole point is kids also have to expect that cops are not going to treat them like anyone differently. And I'm going to tell you something. It may be their mama, daddy, uncle, and everybody who treats them bad, whoops their ass, all that. So when the cop comes, I'm saying it's like you just have to teach your kids to behave under the Constitution because that's the big law that's being used. And to do that, you invoke your Fourth Amendment by teaching your children to say, am I free to go? And if they're not free to go, then you want your lawyer, not your parents.
Now,
that's it. And then guess what? Oh, he didn't steal anything? Oh, we'll let the kid go. But the kid is protected under the law. And guess what? If I'm under 15, yeah, I can't interrogate you. So that's even better. Sit me in a room and don't interrogate me until mama comes. But that's even worse because mama's going to get in there and start talking shit.
This isn't the only incident of mistreatment of an African American child that we've seen. You may recall, our viewers may recall, here in Sacramento, this was probably now, I believe it was pre-pandemic. So it may have been about 3 years ago, where there was a teenage kid who I think was maybe 14 years old who was smoking. So, of course, if you're 14, you're not allowed to buy cigarettes.
That's right.
And you're not allowed to smoke.
Yep.
And an officer, supposedly out of concern for this kid, approached him on that issue. And then it results in him grabbing this kid, throwing the kid to the ground,
yes, it did.
Punching the kid
yes.
as if he were hitting
Woo.
a man. And again, this is only because
I'm concerned.
I'm concerned about your health. I don't want you smoking that cigarette. So what I'm going to do is cause further damage to you physically by assaulting you.
Carm, let me explain.
Hold on. We see bottom line, CC Badger says that type of force was not acceptable.
Hold on.
Now, Lance Casey, hold on. Lance Casey also says, so true, Keith. I believe he's saying in terms of how to behave. Teach them.
That's right.
But on that issue of how to behave, we know that children, you can teach them, right? You can repetitively teach them.
Right.
And in certain circumstances, because they are children and haven't had life experience, those teachings may go out the window. And I'm going to give you one example, or actually two examples.
Please.
One was a training that they did with children who had been trained not to touch firearms, right? And then what they did was left those children alone in a room with a firearm to see whether or not they would follow the instruction of not
Mm-hmm.
touching the firearm. And a substantial number of the kids, despite all of the training that they had, still touched the firearm. Another example is the training that we do telling our children not to talk to strangers, right? Not to accept things from strangers. But they've done studies that show that goes right out the window when the stranger has a cute little puppy or says, I'm looking for my puppy. Have you seen him? Can you help me? And a child just starts thinking about that puppy and they forget all about mama said, don't talk to strangers. So we can train children, yes, and we should train them in the way that lawman is indicating. But we have to know that sometimes they're not going to remember to behave in that way. If they're excited, right, about the puppy, if they're stressed about seeing three officers approach them who are large and wearing guns. So we have to keep that in mind. And again, the issue is that the treatment, it sounds, lawman, like you're saying we just have to accept this treatment, and I'm saying no. Whether it's whether we need to retrain officers in how to handle certain situations and more training in de-escalation in situations that are certainly not serious crimes, and the theft of a bag of potato chips is not a serious crime.
May I proceed?
To give you what you
Watch
need.
this. Watch this, ladies and gentlemen. Carmen is talking about mistreating children. Okay. And she is saying that we teach children and they don't follow us.
Not always.
Wait, hold on. This is my is this
It's
my
yours. Go
thank
ahead.
you. I will argue adults do the same thing. Okay. You can tell an adult not to do something, then they do it. It's how we learn. Now I will argue that when you train your children what to do, they will remember that when you train them to do it. Now, we got to teach adults too how to act because they still screw up too. But children are more apt to do what you say and follow you. That's just like the children who do bad things. You know why they do it? Because they watch other people do it. They go and they see other people do it and get away with it, and they will do the same thing. So when you're doing the right thing and training them how to behave, they will do that.
So I have a
Now, hold on. No, you don't have a
go ahead.
question because I'm gonna go to this. Adults do the same thing, forget and throw stuff out the window. Now, you mentioned two things: touching firearms and the whole puppy testing thing. Okay. The problem is that children are curious, and when you test them in that way, yeah, they'll go touch that. But guess what? That doesn't relate to how to deal with officers. That's a different whole situation. The puppy thing, a whole different situation. Cops aren't out there going, "Hi, kids. Can I talk to you about something? And let me tease you and bring you into this room and all this stuff." Cops ain't doing that. But and they're different. They're identifiable. They have a badge, they have a gun. You know they're
Which causes
cops.
fear in a
No,
child.
no, you
Yes.
teach children fear or not, you do what you got to do. I fear going to a job interview. Does that mean I don't go?
You're an adult, sir. You've had
No.
plenty of life
But I'm
experience.
just saying
So
fear
that's
doesn't
not
stop you from doing the right thing under the Constitution. And that's what you teach them. Now, you said about training officers, right? And do we accept the treatment? I'm telling you, we don't accept it, but the way to deal with it is through our behavior, not expecting them to go back and say, "Oh, you want me to be trained on how to treat children and things like this?" Because they're not going to do it.
well,
And
you say
that's
that
our
they're
insanity.
you say they're not going to do
That's
it.
right.
We've seen them do it with other children. So
Carmen,
what is different? You
every
tell me
day,
what is
what other
different.
children?
You tell
What
me what
other
is
children
different.
they do it with? Because
Children that look more like
every
children
day
that look
we
more
sit
like the
here and we
officers
talk
that are
about our
responding.
children, though. I
Okay.
don't give a shit about the other children.
Well, we
It's
care about
our.
our court side cares about all children.
Oh yeah,
So
all right,
let's
all
not
right.
put
Let's.
on that.
Oh yeah, you know what? I love children. Children everywhere are wonderful. Children should
But
always
you
be living. However, the point is, we were talking about black children, and the cops' attitudes towards that. So, in that vein, I'm just saying we have to teach our children what to do under the law. If you follow the rules under the law, you put the pressure back on the cops.
We do have a comment. It says,
We got a lot of
Cece,
comments.
yes. This also depends on the maturity of the child, and that is extremely true.
Children are
Do you
mature
agree?
at 8 and 9 years old. They
No.
know how to do.
Now,
Wait, they know
I'm
about
I'm I'm
sex.
gonna stop.
They
I'm
know
gonna
about
stop law. I'm gonna
pornography.
stop lawman right here.
They know stuff at 8 and 9. Especially, they can
Uh,
be taught about
they're
cops.
still children, so we're talking about maturity level, and there
Do they
is
go to
so
school?
it doesn't
Do
matter
they
if they
learn to
go.
read?
It doesn't matter if they go to school
Do
and
they
they learned
learn to read?
lawman.
So you can
It
teach
doesn't
them.
lawman. No one is saying that
I
they
know.
are unteachable. What I'm saying is they are a child and there's still a certain lack of maturity because they haven't had the life experience. I agree with you.
Adults do the same thing.
We're not,
Let's
we're
teach
not,
them the maturity,
listen,
Carm.
you can't,
Yes, you can.
okay. No, you cannot.
You
So,
can teach a child to do behavior that's reactive.
lawman, I'm not disagreeing with you.
Thank you.
So let me finish my point. So you are correct. Yes, we teach them, but we also know they are children. So despite the fact that we teach them everything correctly
That's right.
to do, they can be impacted by peer pressure. And we've seen this.
Wait a minute. If I teach a child to do
Even
what I
if
say,
you teach a child to do what
how
you
do
say,
they? How,
you
what
didn't do
peer
everything
pressure
that your
makes them
parents.
know?
You
Do it.
didn't do everything that your parents said. You know you didn't. Don't make me call you out. Okay.
Yes, I did.
No, you didn't.
I just took their ass whooping. That's all.
So you didn't do everything that they said. You did stuff that they
If I
told you.
chose not to,
You did
then
stuff
I
that
took the ass whooping.
and that's fine, but you did stuff that they told you not to do.
First of
So
all,
that
let's pull
is
it
the
back
point.
and say this isn't parents.
That's not true. It depends. No, we were talking about
Cops, not parents.
You were talking about parents training
Yes.
the children, and so what I'm telling
to deal
you
with cops
is you can train your children,
to deal
and
with
they
cops.
still may do things that are not quite in line
Wait a minute.
with the training.
With cops.
That's all.
I mean, I'm training them to deal with cops. Right?
And CC Badger says that's not true. It depends on the individual child.
Right.
I agree with the statement, lawman. However, as parents, we can only do so much. It has to take us as a society to also instill rules and laws within a child.
Bam. That's what I mean. We can't have it both ways. We got to.
She
teach
said
our
you
children.
sound like the police, lawman. Lawman has been called.
If you mean police the group who made millions of dollars, then I'll sound like them.
And that's not
I sound like a man though who is trying to teach his people how to behave so that we survive these things, so that children know what to do. They're not going to mistake law enforcement for a damn predator and stuff. Okay. And they know about law enforcement when they come to 8, 9, 10 years old. They come to the schools. They know kids decide to be cops or not be cops at that age. So I'm just saying.
No, they decide to play cops at that age.
Well, ain't that funny? Because then they know what cops are, don't they? And they know what they do. And you have to just sit them down and teach them, here's what you do if a cop ever asks you a question. Am I free to go? Can I go? Say it in 5 different languages.
Okay, let's assume.
Can I go?
Let's assume that the child does that. Let's assume.
Yeah.
Let's assume.
That's right.
Let's assume that the child does that, and the officer still grabs him and manhandles him.
And the child should say, "I want my lawyer." That's
and
it.
Then what?
That's
now
it.
Let's talk
That's
about the.
it.
Okay, and that's fine. Now
Right.
that is over, what are the ramifications of that? What should the
They're
family
going to comply.
do?
What do you mean? What did the family do?
No,
We're talking about the child.
We're done with the situation. Now it's happened. They followed your
That's
rule.
right.
They followed your rule.
Yes.
But the cop roughs them up anyway. Now, from a legal standpoint, what can the family do?
Then you would find a civil lawyer if you would like and sue the officer. But you better learn about the immunity statutes. You better learn a lot about tort law when it comes to suing the government.
Well, their attorney would let them know whether or not they have a case.
So go talk to a lawyer. But I'm saying, how about your child survives when you teach them how to act? It's like going in the woods. You got to know how to deal with the bear. If the bear is there, you teach your child, lay down, play dead. in the wilderness. You got to teach your children how to survive. And that's what we're talking about.
Well, it also sounds, though, to some degree, like you are blaming the victim.
First of all, you got to be a victim to be blamed.
Well, if the cop shoots you in the back of your head, I think that kind of makes you a victim.
All of a sudden, we have switched from children and cops coming out to cops shooting the guy in the back of the head. Car.
It's all relative to how African Americans are treated by law enforcement.
Which is
so
why
we
they
are not,
all act the same way against the bear.
So we're not limiting this conversation. We're saying overall, African Americans are treated in disparate ways by law enforcement.
So that we all should act in the same way against them.
And that would be great, as you say, if we lived in a wonderful world where everyone could comport their behavior. But you're going to have
utopia.
Individuals. That's what I'm saying. We don't live in a utopia.
We create utopia.
So you're going to have people who are not going to be able to do
We create utopia by acting the same way against them.
Lawman, what do you say to the person or the child who is autistic? And so they can't behave in the way that you're saying. What do you say to that person? It's okay for the officer to mistreat them?
Here's the deal. Why am I talking to the child? I have told the child whether they're autistic. I've taught them to eat. I have taught them to read and write.
Not
and
all
they're
autistic children can read and write.
But Carm, I have taught them to behave in certain fashions.
I don't think.
Okay. Wait. See, you keep switching the game on us. I'm not saying you turn. Oh well, autistic children, they're gonna just get beat up and stuff.
That's what it sounds like.
No, that's
because
what
I'm telling you, there are certain people who are not going to be able to comport with that. So I have a friend who has a daughter who's autistic who does not speak. So she's not going to be able to say to the officer, Mr. Officer, am I free to leave?
But you're presuming that the cops are going to come and talk to her. First of all, we're presuming that she's in a situation where cops got to go talk to her.
Well, that can happen to anyone.
Who's doing something to where cops have to come. Either they're called.
Wow.
That's
who's
right.
Doing something, or who someone perceives is doing something.
That's right.
So, for example, a child is doing nothing wrong.
That's right.
And a Karen calls.
Yes.
Now, so the child says, nothing wrong.
That's right. And and you teach your child, if you are not doing nothing wrong, you just say, "Am I free to go?"
You're missing the point about the maturity level of.
Well, children. Wait a minute? How do you make a rule for different mental issues, different sensitivities of each individual? We live in a society that has to play by one big rule.
And that is true.
And you're never going to make rules that apply to one kid.
We're not saying that apply to one kid.
Of the autistic kid, the sensitive kid.
The officer should be able to assess the situation and determine, is this a child, the child that I'm talking to, that this child appear to be a child of normal intelligence? Are they giving me full and complete sentences? Are their sentences commensurate with their age level?
I got one response. Does the bear decide, I won't eat an autistic kid?
Well,
I'm not going to eat.
You keep referring to the officer as
the bear because they are the evil.
No, accept that. And I'm not saying that they are the evil.
Carmen, does the bear change his mind because you're black, you're white, you're a kid? Do they not eat you because of that?
In this instance, yeah.
No. The bear is going to act that way with everyone.
And that's why your bear comparison doesn't act. No,
yes, it does.
No,
that's
it doesn't.
Why it works.
It doesn't work because they don't act that way with everyone.
Yes,
so apparently there are some of your bears who say, hey, I see this particular person and I'm going to give them much leeway. Excuse me, sir, with the shotgun. Could you please put that shotgun down? Oh, you don't want to? You're walking around with it? So there's your bear who's treating someone differently.
That's right.
So the bear doesn't treat, your bear doesn't treat everyone the same.
My bear treats you that way when you go into the woods. Okay.
Except so then our entire life is the woods. So our entire life is the woods. Because I'm in my own house and the bear comes to my house. This is the bear comes to my house. I'm in my house. I'm not in the woods.
That's right.
The bear is at my house.
That's why you have
kicks my door in. Yes. And because I'm exercising one of my rights, my right to have a firearm sitting next to me in my house where I'm sleeping.
That's right.
And the bear breaks in
my
home, not his woods.
That's right.
And shoots me dead.
Yep, that's what happens. What I'm talking about is, and what we're talking about is a situation where the cops are detaining children or individuals. In those situations, they're not busting down a door in a house. So we're mixing apples and oranges when we do that.
We're,
Let's talk about detentions of children. Your distinction was they don't treat all children that way. And I said, okay, but bears eat children. And if they want to eat a child, they can. And if they're just eating our children, then we better decide on our own unique way that we have to respond in order not to be eaten. That's all my point.
and again, I agree with your point. I
Thank
don't
you.
disagree with your
Then
point.
let's
But
teach them.
what I'm not saying not to teach them. Certainly we teach them, but I'm
Yeah.
saying in certain instances that teaching isn't necessarily going to help that particular child.
But
So
does every child pass in the class? I mean, does every child understand the lesson plan, even though the teacher spends hours trying to teach it? Of
no,
course
every child
not.
does not.
That's right. So some are not going to do it.
Here's
But
what I'm saying, as
if
a
I can
society,
save
we
30
don't.
kids and lose one, I'd rather do that.
Here's what I'm saying, and I want my point to be extremely clear. Certainly, we teach our children in the
Yes.
way that you are indicating. But what we also don't do is accept this kind of behavior towards our children. And so, again, that brings us back to what you always talk about in terms of voting. Who are we putting in these positions of power that hire officers?
Well,
So I want you to be
not
thinking,
only to
because we
hire
have hold on, we have an election coming up for sheriff and for
district
district
attorney
attorney.
and
And
judges.
so you need to be aware of who is running, of whose policies align with your views, and you need to vote.
It's true.
Now,
Absolutely. 100%. So here's the thing. I think the lesson is this. Look, I'm just saying you have to have a uniform policy that applies to all. I cannot pick one child out and say that that child's going to be treated differently or react differently. That's all I'm saying. And so we have to move forward with everybody continuing to teach to deal with these bears in the woods, whether you're an adult or a child. And the second thing and the last thing is this show is dedicated to Judge Jimmy Long. Judge Jimmy Long passed away right when COVID came out, and we never had a chance to celebrate his life. He's been a mentor and father figure to me in the law for over 30 years. I love that man like he was my dad. I would do anything he told me to do, and I respected him completely. And we are going to have a flag lowering ceremony at 3:30 at the courthouse where they will lower a flag with all honors and we'll be singing and sharing stories about Jimmy. He was a great guy, and it's great to send him out finally in this way. So,
and what date does that occur?
oh, that happens on Tuesday afternoon at 3:30 to 5:30 at the courthouse.
So that's April 26th at the main courthouse
Yes,
located at 720
Ninth
9th
Street.
Street.
All right. I love
We
that
are
we have
going
a
to,
spirit discussion here. And I want you to know, look, I love her, and this is not personal. This is just the way we're going to have to present ourselves and stuff to you when it comes to these issues.
yes,
But we always got to remember that we move as a team, never move alone.
that is
So
it.
this
That
is
is
all
it.
about the voting that she's talking about. It's all about being participant in your society, in
And
your neighborhood.
and paying attention. If you see a child being detained, and you can
Watch.
watch, but also if you can to some degree intervene, and certainly record, record, record. We thank you here at Courtside for spending
Definitely.
this time with us this Friday. Again, we are here every Friday at 6
6 o'clock.
p.m. and we look forward to seeing you. We thank you again.
Bring your friends.
Stay safe.
All righty. Bye bye.